Today on Rat and Cat, stories of near-death hypothermia. Welcome to Rat and Cat, where we search for those who have gone missing so others can learn how to survive on Nakia. A number of you responded with your own stories to a video I posted about hypothermia. It was called Zombies, Odd Things That Kill You in the Wild and How to Avoid Them. It's part of an ongoing series I'm doing here on Rat and Cat, and I thought some of those stories in the comments were both interesting and potentially life-saving to others, so I wanted to share some of those with you. I want to start with one from Little Chenna, who's been watching for almost the whole time I think I've been here on YouTube. She said, "My first experience with hypothermia was in 2002. At the time I lived in Germany, and we were expecting a really bad storm. The sky was already dark and it was windy like hell, but my two dogs needed to go out. I put my rain gear on and thought I had enough time to go to an open field, maybe a quarter mile away. With both dogs on the leash, I made it there, but the storm was faster. It started to rain / hail, and the wind got so bad that I couldn't breathe. I fell immediately on my knees, covered my head, and crawled to a small bush for more protection. The rain gear was no help. The wind pressure was so high the water went through it. The temperature dropped from 60 to 36 degrees in minutes. I was soaked and started to feel really cold. I couldn't walk because of the high winds, so I crawled slowly to the end of the field. It took 20 minutes or so. My dogs pulled me a little uphill, and from there it was maybe 800 feet to my house. When I finally got up, I was numb, not able to walk straight. It took me at least 15 minutes more to get to the door, fighting the raging wind and hail. Inside, I went immediately down, shaking uncontrollably, and was not able to get my clothes off. I was still heavily out of breath and had no control over my hands to open the zipper or pull my pants. I can't remember how I got into the bathroom, but I went into the shower with all my clothes on, and after 5 minutes of warm water, I was finally able to get my clothes off. I went to bed and needed 30 minutes before I was warm enough that I wasn't shaking anymore. This storm, Orkin, killed 11 people in the area, and I learned the hard way that you can get killed in your backyard, a few feet away from your house. I was hypothermic after just a few minutes there because of the high winds, around 90 miles per hour, and the intense rain and hail. I felt safe because I thought I was close to my house, but it was a mistake. Thanks for reading." So I responded to her, and then she responded back and told me that there was another guy who they found just 5 feet from his car who got hypothermic but didn't make it, or got in hypothermia. And she says, "This is the reason why videos like this are so important." Then Adrian N. wrote, "I was living in the bush and I had to go hunting for food. I ran into some folks that had got lost, so I told them to come with me to a hut that I knew 2 or 3 hours away so they could walk out the next day. On the way out, it started to rain hard and it got cold, and I knew that it was coming, but I had somewhere to go and I knew where I was, and yes, the other 2 were going to go too. I've had one thing in my life that made me the man I am today. I trained in the SAS as a sniper and had the drive in me and the wits to know what was going on. And when the other 2 wanted to start taking stuff off, I made them keep it on. They had rainwear and did not. I got them to the hut. I got a fire going. They walked out the next day, and I got their food, so it was a win-win. And in case if you haven't watched some of my other videos about hypothermia, one of the things it does is it drives you to want to take off your clothes because you think you're too hot. It's just when your blood rushes out to your limbs. So Jerry Lynn Z then wrote, "I was out bear hunting once and I got lost. And by the time we got back to camp, I was freezing and exhausted, walking in 2 feet of snow. I was lucky. I was with my husband who knew exactly what to do for me. First thing was to get me out of the wet clothes. He got me dressed and into dry sweats and a sleeping bag and got me some warm broth, or got some warm broth in me. It was a cold night in our tent, but the sleeping bags were warm because of our body heat and hand warming packs in our sleeping bags. Now I carry a lot of survival gear in my pack." And then user A2445 wrote, I had early hypothermia once, and I will never forget the effect it had on my mental state. I was doing a weekend mountain hike with a companion on a mild summer day into an area we had never been before. The map we were using was too old, and we lost track. We wasted 2 hours bushwhacking our way up a steep exposed mountainside before we found our way again. As we pushed upwards, the sky clouded over and the cold wind sprang up. He had cold weather gear to wear, but I didn't. I got super fatigued and cold during the climb. When we reached our intended campsite, my companion picked up that I was shivering. He gave me what he thought was an easy task, making a fire, while he got food ready. Now, I've always prided myself on fire making, but on this occasion it seemed like I could barely remember the process. It was like my brain was running on quarter speed, and parts of my memory were switched off. It's odd to say this now, but I can recall sitting blankly on a log with kindling in my hands, trying to grapple with the question of what I was supposed to do with it. Thank goodness my partner noticed that I was taking way longer than a normal person should, and took over. I just sat there while he made the fire, got the food and drink into me, and got me back to normal. I felt guilty about having him do all that work solo, but with the best will in the world, there is no way I could usefully contribute in the mental state I was in. In retrospect, it was scary to realize how quickly I succumbed. It only took 2 hours to go from perfectly normal to barely functioning. I don't know what would have happened if he hadn't had warm clothes on and had gotten hypothermia too. And I responded, I said, that sounds like a close call. I'm glad you had a friend there. How long did it take for you to get back to normal? Do you feel it was mostly the warm food that helped you, or was putting on dry clothes, did that help you a lot too? And he responded, it hadn't rained. We didn't have to traverse wet ground, so my clothes weren't wet. Not that I had a change of warm clothes anyway, which was a critical error. I forgot to mention that our campsite was far from people, our car, and help. We were at a cave high up on a remote mountainside. No mobile reception. During our climb, my sweat kept being dried from my poorly clad body in the wind. The evaporation effect made the wind chill feel even colder. Also, I didn't mention that night was falling as we reached the cave campsite, so the air temperature was dropping minute by minute. The campfire was super fast, and the effect of warming me from the outside, and the hot food did the same trick on the inside, and I'm pretty sure I loaned my friend's jacket. All in all, it took maybe 1 or so hours to feel okay. Though naturally, I was tired out by the experience and went straight to sleep in my cozy sleep bag. Another thought, it was my friend's observation of me and appropriate responses which saved the day. At the time, hypothermia didn't cross my mind. I thought that hypothermia was something that only happened to people in snow country. Physically, I felt dreadful, but I never once thought my symptoms meant anything serious. I had no idea that I was in the process of deteriorating, that I was ill, and that I needed help. And then KCT wrote, 2 years ago I was working on a friend's house. It was really cold their day in Texas, and the high was 29. And me and my girlfriend spent 10 hours in it working. Not hard work, just light, steady work. When I got home, I noticed that I didn't know what I was doing, how to get in the door, and I was twitchy in my legs, and I was so cold that I was shaking like crazy. I couldn't get warm at all. I had to get in a hot bath and started drinking warm water, and it barely made a dent in my coldness. Finally, after an hour or so in bed, I started to come back to normal feelings. It was really scary now that I think back on it. I was pretty close to the edge. To me, it's really amazing when you read all of these stories and how quickly hypothermia can set in, and how unexpectedly, and even around the house. And fortunately, most of the time we're in a place where we can go back inside and get warmed up fast. But people do die in their homes from hypothermia on a regular basis. When I'm out, it's just always important to remember to bring at least 2 layers. What you have on, or actually I bring 3 layers to wear, and then always have shelter and something, a sleeping bag or at least an emergency blanket to crawl into that I can warm up and keep dry in wherever I'm at. And I think the casual day hiker really loses that, or forgets about that, or doesn't know about that. I know I didn't for years even think about that. I thought, oh, I'll have a few extra provisions and I can just hoof it on out if I really need to. I've been reading Deep Survival by Lauren Gonzalez in preparation for a video that I'm doing coming up. It's on fear and survival. Interesting statistic. At least 75 people caught in a catastrophe either freeze or simply wander in a daze. They can't think. They can't act correctly. Others maintain that people rarely panic but often remain calm in denial, as happened in the World Trade Center. It's interesting how much of a choice it is and how many people will slip off it and don't know that they are slipping into that. And I want to read this other teaser that he has at the front of the book. The differences between people. One person, after breaking his leg on a 2,000-foot peak in Peru during a blizzard, Joe Simpson was given up for dead. Without food or water or a tent, he spent 6 days crawling off the mountain and back to camp. How did he do it? On the other hand, as a skipper of a sunken yacht slipped over the side of his life raft into the Atlantic night, his 4 horrified crew members heard him calmly explain, "I'm going to get the car." Then they listened to his screams as he was eaten alive by sharks in the dark. Gonzalez talks about how once all the superficial who we are, culture, pop culture, all of that stripped away, all that's left is the core survivalist. What makes that happen? It's something we're going to talk about in the future, and I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think? Have you had a survival experience where you found those outer layers being stripped away, where you just became this primal, instinctual person and you knew how to survive? Or do you feel kind of that flight tendency where you're just going to give up, let things go? Thanks for watching, Rat Cat. Appreciate you watching this video. I hope you've subscribed. If not, please do like and share these videos. If you want to help me search on cold cases for missing people, for people who have gone missing for several years, please log on to my Patreon page. I'll leave a link below, and you can help support those searches. Until next time, this is Rat and Cat, where we search for those who have gone missing so others can learn how to survive.